program. So this is on the drive as well. But this last year, we've had a strategic planning task force. Several of you on the call or here today have been on that task force, and it's been a really great learning experience. We've taken the needs assessment that we did 2 years ago, the kind of feedback that we got from that, what needs and gaps were in victim services, and then also from our listening sessions. We came around about 1.5 years ago and did, turn my mic up, okay. Sorry for them, it's quieter. Just let me know if online that's better for you guys. Sorry, in the room, it feels really loud. Okay. So we have taken the needs that we got from the listening sessions from our needs assessment that we did with victims and with victims service providers. How many of you guys remember the survey? Any of this sound familiar? Okay, very good. And so we have now, we've been working this last year with our strategic planning task force to develop a strategic plan on ways that we could actually improve victim services, what needs and gaps we wanted to focus on, and created kind of objectives, what outcomes we want to. And now our task force has kind of morphed into a improving victim services task force. So not everyone that was on our previous task force has stayed on, and we've had some people come on that were previously on. And if you're interested in wanting to be on the task force, we're always accepting new people. But now we're kind of working on our action plan. Some of the things in our action plan are not something that we can control. Some of the things have to be looking at legislation changes and things like that. So those will take obviously longer because that always takes up forever. But just kind of wanted to give you guys a little bit of an overview of what we're doing. So I mute up my water. Okay. Hopefully you guys can see it okay. It's not too tiny. It is on the Google Drive as well. So our first objective that we have is to identify gaps in victim services rights and activate a plan to address those gaps. But we really want resources for all victimizations to be equitable. Some of the things we found that when looking at the different needs and things like that is that there are a lot of resources for kind of your 4 primary categories of domestic violence, child abuse, sexual assault. Actually, it's the 3 top ones, and then we kind of have everything else lumped in this other. And so just looking at how we can make those resources more equitable for the different crime categories. So some of the things that we're doing is a statewide victim resource process. Hildy's done a lot of work with this in creating the Resource Connect, or I said that wrong. Victim Resource Connect. We are looking at updating that. That's something that she's constantly updating. And then I am also working on this I know I've been saying forever because it takes forever to do. It's a very tedious one, but a statewide resource guide that would be a PDF that's searchable that we continue to update. Right now it's in a very, very rough draft, but I will just show you guys the folder and I will put the link in the chat, but this is something you guys can access now. We've been working as a task force to create a victim service library. Let me just put in the chat, the link, and I will, sorry, apparently I'm direct messaging someone. There we go, try again, okay. I will also put a link to this, a shortcut on our handouts and resources for that. But we have had from other agencies collecting victim forms, training, policies, procedures. We have job description examples, but the 2 that I wanted to highlight, we do have a lot of resources on here. That the statewide resource guide is the one that I am working on a lot. So right now it looks really messy because it's just kind of everyone's resource guides patched into one, and I'm fixing that. But there are on here Timpanogos legal. Sorry, that is just, let me just move it. Okay. I don't know if that's gonna work. Sorry, guys. I don't like mics. There we go. Okay. Let me know online if you guys can't hear me. So here you can see the different districts. There's English and Spanish, and I cannot take credit for these. These are from Timpanogos Legal Center that creates these, and they do keep them up to date. So if you need a more updated one, you can always check their website too. But that's something that's there for every district, and they have kind of a combination. So that's something you guys can look at and access. And like I said, the PDF version is coming. It's just something I'm constantly working on. And then in here, we do have information and brochures that other people have sent me, or ones that other agencies or our own agency uses. So there's a lot of really good resources in there. And so I think you guys can look through that as well. So this is something that our task force has been working on building, and we continue to add more to it. If you would like one of your brochures, or you guys have a really good resource list and you want to send it to me, please do. I would love that. So that's kind of one of the big things that we're working on with that. And then with that state resource guide, it's helping us to see what regions of the state have a lot less resources compared to others. So that's part of our action plan, is to really look at how we can bring maybe resources to the more rural areas and things like that. Part of this objective is that we want to create a survey that is an option. You don't have to use it, but that can be a way for you to survey your services for victims, to give to victims, and it would be a universal one that you can utilize, to see how your services are, to see how their perspective is on their experience and things like that. So that's our first objective. Like I've talked about before, we want to improve victim services in the rural areas and marginalized communities. So really working with our underserved populations and identifying ways that we can bring in more resources for them. Or really, it's a lot of times their resources are there. It's just not everyone knows that that resource exists, or getting people connected and having them go with that. So that's one of our other areas. This one I've been doing a lot on, and I can't take full credit for it. I've been working with Amy Hernandez a lot. She has currently a lot of projects. She is with the Administrative Office for Courts, amazing. But she has 2 work groups that I am sitting on, and that's what's referenced in the action plan. But we have a civil system integration support or integration work group, and then we also have a criminal justice systems integration. So we're looking at, for the civil one, protective orders and how we can extend hours for when someone can request a protective order, looking at how we could open the courts or have a judge available outside of the 9 to 5 to sign protective orders, those temporary requests. So that's something that the courts is looking at. That's exciting to see how that can change. And then we're also looking at all the different forms that victims fill out for protective orders, for this temporary, the permanent. Like yesterday, we were working on the wording for the form. If they're denied their request, they actually have a right to then request a hearing and so if they're denied the original protective order request. So we're working on forms, and to bring it down to, grade 5, 4th or 5th grade reading level, so it's easy for victims to understand, and bring in more trauma-informed language. So that's really exciting with that. And with the criminal justice work group, we are also looking at how we can, they have a pilot program that they're going to be starting with a domestic violence court docket, is what they're calling the program. and looking at ways that we can bring in treatment, and not just always jail time or things like that as consequences for the defendant, but also ways that we can ask the victim how the process is going, or looking at surveying and having a QR code easy to access and things like that in the court process. So some of those things we already engaged in. And then obviously we want to try to bring in as much trauma-informed practices as we can. Obviously, we can't change the full criminal court process. It is a criminal justice system. It's an entire system. So we're just looking at ways that we can incorporate more trauma-informed practices, and what we can do within the current system, and things like that as well. Our other objective with victim services is to facilitate statewide collaboration. We have done quite a bit of work with sexual assault in setting standards of practice. Our VOCA state funding team has been working a lot with our rape crisis centers across the state. And many of you guys are probably familiar with that if you work at a nonprofit rape crisis center or domestic violence shelter that's doing both programs. And so we're working on those. We've created a standard of care. And then we're looking at, we've also defined what core services system-based advocates provide. And we have 22 state-funded victim advocate programs that with our last state funding that we said, these are the core sort of services that you need to be doing. And they kind of went through and checked off what they are and the ways that we can help them achieve the ones that maybe they aren't able to do. And so really kind of having that, we want to bring in that when a victim comes in and they're a victim in Cache County versus a victim in Kane County, that they can at least have a minimum level of care and victim services that they can expect, and have that it doesn't have to look drastically different, that their rights or their processes or what they can access doesn't have to be dramatically different just because they live in a different region. So that's part of what we're doing. Many of you probably have participated, but we have started Advocate Connect. That was something Rochelle really worked to get off the ground, and I'm still doing it, even though she's left us and to go to CCJJ. But we have Beatrice that is doing an amazing job that represents the Crime Victims Legal Clinic. And then we have Tatiana with Timpanogos Legal Center. So they're there to give advocates an opportunity to ask questions about victims' rights, as well as the protective order process or court process. And it's a way you guys can connect as advocates monthly. So we have that usually the second Monday of the month at 2 o'clock. So if you aren't registered for that and you would like to be, reach out to me as well. So those are some of the ways that we're trying to facilitate statewide collaboration. We work closely, and Rochelle's good at keeping us informed on what the Victim Services Commission is doing. That's kind of a new thing that they're still working on, getting all the seats filled for that. And that has been growing. And then Hildy does our Bridge the Gap trainings to help bring information to the underserved communities. And that's something we'll continue to do. Any questions on some of those objectives or ideas that you guys want us to add in, or ways you feel like we could achieve the objective, or if you want to add anything? Okay. Like I said, it's been a process for the last year. Okay, so we had kind of two areas that we were working on. Victim services was our big area, and then collaboration and professional development was kind of our other area that we really wanted to focus on, so that you guys as victim advocates can feel supported. So we've looked at core training. We do have defined kind of 16 hours of core training between what our office offers with our Utah Victim Assistance Academy, what UDVC offers with their domestic violence, CAT CAT program or CAP. I always forget if it's CAT or CAP. Program that they do their 40-hour training. UCAS's 40-hour sexual assault counselor training, and what elements that CJCs need with their national accreditation. And so we have done kind of what core subjects we have identified, but we are working on ways that we can make it more accessible, ways that it can be online, so you can get at least that core when you have a brand new hire and you're waiting for one of our offices to have a 40-hour training. You can have those core kind of subjects first. So we've been looking into different ways that we could have a platform for that, and still a way process. If any of you work in government, you know it takes like forever to get anything like approved, especially if you have to involve the Department of Technical Services, then it always takes a long time. So we are working on that. We have developed a core or standard job description for system-based advocates. So we do have kind of a standard that we based off of multiple agencies' job descriptions for their system-based advocates and what we felt was the core services that they should be providing. So people can reference that. It is on that folder of the Victim Service Library. And one of the things someone asked us to help on is like, what questions are good questions to ask when you're hiring someone in victim services. So that's something that our group will work on as well. Our pike in the sky idea, we really would love to have a mentoring program. So so many of our advocates that have been in for a long time are such wealth of knowledge, and when they leave, that knowledge just kind of leaves with them a lot of times. And so creating a mentor program where a brand new advocate that feels like they're floundering and have no idea what they're doing, or they just feel really overwhelmed, can have a mentor and have someone that they can call and be like, hey, what would you do on a case that's like this? Or I'm struggling with having the judge actually talk to me or acknowledge me. How can I have this? Or officers aren't calling me on scene. How could I have that? Or for community-based, how can we improve our response on lapse or those that are coming into shelter? Just having someone that can be a sounding board, but also a lot of our system-based advocates, they may be the only advocate in that agency, and their supervision is all cops, usually, or a prosecutor, and so they don't always understand their role. So having someone else that understands their role can be, obviously I try to be that for advocates. That's part of my role, is to be a mentor to them, but we have, I think, 150 to 200 system-based advocates, and then we have like 400 community-based advocates. So it's a lot of advocates to try to mentor. So that's something that we are looking at that and ways that we could have that work. So if you're wanting to be a mentor, again, reach out to me if that's something you're interested in doing. And then right now we are working on the library of online training. We already do have a really good library on our YouTube channel. Like and subscribe. We always say we're trying to get to 200 subscriptions. So we don't have the million subscriptions like some of our YouTubers, but that does have a lot of information. Our SWAVOs always get added to our YouTube channel, but we're looking at ways that we can have kind of that library that's really accessible, that some of our national partners already do have. And then the last thing with our professional is something that has been discussed multiple times for many years, is credentialing. I even had it come up last week, someone asking me about credentialing and if we have a credentialing in Utah or how they can get credentialed. It's something that we see that there can be a lot of value, but the processes are difficult to kind of navigate. And the different advocacy that we have in the state that people provide needs a very different credentialing process. And so that's something that we're still looking at, ways that we can elevate victim advocacy. And really the purpose for me for credentialing and why we would want to do it is just that it gives that not necessarily authority, but has a level of respect, right? So victim advocacy can have a level of respect in the criminal justice process. It just brings another level of maybe value for those that sometimes question what the victim advocate knows or does. So that's why we've looked at it. We even have they had to change legislation. I think last year they had victim advocates, system-based advocates in the legislation that could get first responder treatment, but was only credentialed advocates. And we had to, let the legislators know that there's not a credentialing in Utah. So to require that, then you limit who can get that service. So there are national credentialing programs, and there are, you can, definitely do that. And that's something that's an option as well. But we are looking at ways that we can incorporate it and bring it in and bring value in that process. Okay. Another area that we really are trying to work on is, and this is more on the local level and just providing support to the local levels, is breaking down barriers of territorialism between agencies, organizations. We know that everyone is worried about their funding and things like that, or they're concerned in their area. And so we want to make sure that people know each other in your area, that you know how to work together, what your different roles are, and so that you can both be in the victim's corner, or all parties can be in the victim's corner to really help them. We definitely have areas that we've seen it work really well when they're collaborating together with our community and system partners, and it's really cool to see. So we've reached out, to some of those communities that have kind of those collaboration partners figured out of ways that we can model that and bring it to other areas of the state. We do provide support as well as UCASA and SAKI provide support to local sexual assault response teams. I've backed a little bit away from attending every area's SART, but if you would like me to attend a SART in your area, I still can and provide training and technical assistance as well. But UCASA and SAKI also provide that to really strengthen those as well. I can also attend your coordinated community response teams and come in and provide training or support, as well as domestic violence coalitions. And then the biggest area that we're now focusing on with our team is really researching best practices of how victims, what's best practices for a victim to navigate the criminal justice system and navigate getting services through the community-based advocacy, looking at what other states are doing to make it easier for victims to navigate both system and community-based partners or programs. And also looking at what best practices there are in victim services response. So that's kind of a big research one that always takes a little bit of time, but we are working on that as well for our task force. Okay. I'm just double checking. Okay. Again, like I said, we're looking at best practices of what other states do also to help collaborate. Utah's kind of unique that not every state has as big of a system-based program, advocacy program as we do. In Utah, some just have the only witness coordinators that are in court that only do notifications, or our system-based programs, a lot of them do connect the victim with community resources that get them connected to, financial resources and things like that, help them with protective orders and do more than some other states do. So making it, what works well for our state, what things are going well and what things can we improve is what we're looking at. Okay, so that's kind of just an overview of the task force plan. We're always kind of improving it and adding to it as well. I'm going to stop sharing because but you guys can definitely look at it if you guys, I know strategic plans are just so fun to read. But I did add on there on the drive as well, a copy of our summary from our needs assessment, as well as a summary from our listening sessions. And I am working on having a final report of kind of everything we did with the needs assessment and the strategic planning task force, and now our improving victim services task force. So I would give kudos to my task force. They have been amazing. They have done so much work and have brought so much value to our team, and their expertise has been invaluable. So those that I know are on, I have several on that are on my task force. current one and past one. So thank you for those that have given work with that. So those are kind of some of the things that were the projects that we're working on with UOBC. We're always trying to help provide support to you guys. We are shorter or lower in numbers right now in staff with some of the people that have left or things like that. But we are still available to be here for training and technical assistance. Hildy and I are always willing to come to your agency and provide training, or to come to one of your SARTs or your coalition meetings, anything like that, to provide that training or technical assistance. So that's a little bit about our strategic plan. We're still, like I said, really kind of in the thick of it and working on our action plan. Was there any questions or comments or sarcastic remarks? Is there a quiet bunch? I will put my email in the chat for those that don't know it, but if you got my email from SWAVO today, then you have my email. So, but just in case. Oh, I just put my email in wrong. Let's try that again. Sorry, guys. One more time. There we go. It's with the S. Sorry, guys. Was there a question? Sorry, I saw someone turn their camera on, so I didn't know if there was a question. Perfect. Yeah, so ways you can get involved too, if you're wanting to know more about any of the different projects we're working on, or you want to be on the task force, definitely please email me. I'd love to have, we try to have someone from every region of the state, from every district, and we try to have both community and system based on our, in the regions, but more hands are always helpful. So, okay, well, if we don't have any questions, we'll take a little bit longer break. If Gary comes down early, then we'll come back at 2:40, but if he doesn't, if he's not down here and ready to go, then we'll start at 2:45 like the agenda says. So you guys can take a little stretch break. Those online